Hello everyone, this is Nathan Lindorf with The Rational Independent. Today we're doing something a little different. The top article on Reddit just points to a video. So this is from MSNBC. This is from MSNBC, Mika and Joe, who I believe Joe Biden recently said were his favorite news program. So let's get an idea, for those of us who don't watch MSNBC every day, what the world looks like to the crew over there, because they have a guest spot. I guess they start here, but then they loop in some other people. I guess they want to make it more dynamic. Let's see.
Also in that Fox News town hall, Trump essentially admitted to killing the bipartisan border security bill in Congress because it would have, quote, made it much better for the opposing side. Biden.
Why were you against the House, against the Senate border deal, the bipartisan border?
Well, they allow 5,000 people a week. Number one, that, but it also made it much better for the opposing side. I don't know if you've heard this, but I came up with this one: migrant crime. There's violent crime, there's migrant crime. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's going to be worse than any other form of crime.
Yeah, actually, that's so many things about that are wrong.
Okay, so we have a big sigh from Mika, and we have Joe stepping in to say so many things about that are wrong. So first, I have a quick complaint. I hate Fox News. They did this town hall last night. I was working. I missed it. I want to look at clips. I spent 15 minutes digging around trying to find the clip that was clearly edited right there to get an idea if there was additional context. Because believe it or not, MSNBC has been known to take Donald Trump out of context, in spite of the fact that he kind of speaks in non sequiturs and kind of circuitously. He does generally have a point, but it makes it pretty easy the way he speaks verbally to chop him up and make him out of context look, quote unquote, even worse than he already is. So I figured first test of reporting is, there's your clip. Now let's go look at the full context and see what we can find. Well, Fox News has apparently decided that their social media strategy is to lock everything down, and it's their proprietary information. I found 3 or 4 clips, none of them discussing this particular border deal answer, discussing the migrant crime label, which we'll get to in a second, and a few other things. But it just irks me to no end that in this world of social media, in this world where video is meant to be disseminated to go viral, to cause conversation and engagement, Fox News plays the game of, this is our video. You can only have the pieces that we let you have, the pieces that we think are flattering. It seems silly that a presidential candidate would put his time into a meeting on an outlet that is then going to lock down the distribution of that particular content. It's a very old school institutional way of thinking. Don't really have a lot of patience for it. I eventually found a transcript and I read it over. We're not going to get into the details. Donald Trump doesn't talk about this issue much. That means he doesn't clarify. And with Donald Trump, if he doesn't clarify, he often says things that are very easily taken out of context. So I'm not going to argue the point to death, but I will just offer that while he does say, first, his concern over the migrant bill, the border security bill, basically put into law an allowance of 5,000 illegal entries a day before the border would supposedly be locked down. Although the only mechanism for that was that you just had to go to a border crossing where there was like a bridge or a border patrol station in order to then still be allowed across the border. In addition, it made a bunch of changes to immigration. It was a sweeping bill, and it did things like, hey, you're here illegally. You know what? Here's authorization for you to work right away, which means you can now be employed and everyone's happy to have you, and you can't be deported for that because now you're a worker. And if you're working here, well, then you have to have the ability to pay taxes. And if you're working here and you're paying taxes here and your hearing is in 5 years, by the time you get to your hearing, you've got a wife, you've got a kid. Well, now you have ties with the community. Now we can't evict you. Now we can't deport you because now you're here. You might as well be a de facto citizen. Now you're a resident. Of course, that's the path that's going to take. So, of course, people who want to actually enforce border law, immigration law, object to that. Donald Trump didn't do a very good job in the town hall explaining He wanted to brag about building his wall, which they didn't cover in their clip. He wanted to brag about getting Mexico to send soldiers to the border. He called the Mexican president a socialist, but a great guy. Very Donald Trumpy. All of that is kind of beside the point, because what Democrats are trying to say is how they're trying to cast this issue. And we've been discussing this since the very first time that it hit, from right when the legislation was released. This legislation is being proposed in the narrative as though it's going to actually help the border. And it is an age-old trick of people who are manipulative and in bad faith. If you first cause a problem, and then you offer to be the one to solve it, but you just got to give me more power in order to solve it. Well, the left hand causes problems and the right hand grabs more power, and before you know it, you have an autocratic government. Before you know it, you have a dictatorship. That is a breakdown of the constitutional order. That's not how things are supposed to go. But that's what the left is trying to do here. No one can argue that Joe Biden has not ordered the Border Patrol, Mayorkas, DHS, etc., to essentially stop enforcing border policy, which has caused over the last few years a flood of people coming into America who should not be here. Further facilitating the difficulty of their deportation, DHS and its various entities is documented as moving illegal aliens around the country by bus and by plane, shipping them all over the country, which makes it monumentally more difficult to remove them. That's a real problem, because now it's very expensive and politically painful to try and remove these people, but it's the right thing to do if you believe in the rule of law. Or we can just change the law and backdoor a bunch more people who are going to owe the Democrats a favor because now they're American citizens. It's a total mess. So the left, i.e. Biden administration and flunkies, has created this problem of illegal immigration. By created, I mean they have dramatically ramped it up. And here in an election year, now they have this secretly negotiated bill that is sold as, this is going to fix it. Here, you agree, we have a problem on the border. Let's fix it. Except that fixing it requires that you actually look at the detail. And if you look at the detail, you can realize pretty quickly that if we pass that bill, it would make the border worse. So now the Democrats have set up a win-win-win. If illegal immigration continues unchecked, let's say Biden wins another term, we have another 4 years of this, we have another 20 to 30 million people come into America. You think that doesn't change things forever? It certainly does. I love immigrants. I don't love illegal aliens. I think that's a distinction that most thinking people can understand. If you bring in that flood of illegal aliens, you're going to have a problem. That's a win for the Democrats, because that means they, regardless of how that plays out, it moves the country in the direction that they want to go. More central planning, more government control, less civil society, more reliance on government services, more docile voting classes. A serf class is basically what you're importing. It's sick. If, here in this election year, they pass this bill that's crap, then they get to essentially put into law and formalize this lawless flood of illegal aliens that will continue and get them where they want to go. It just takes a few more years. But now, under the cloak of law. That's a bad move. If the Republicans have a spine enough to push back and say, no, we're not going to pass that border bill, Biden gets to look like a hero and tough on crime because his immigration bill would solve these problems that he caused in the first place. So it becomes a winning election issue, or it becomes a checkmate move over the next few years. Here's how MSNBC has clipped it and how they want to present it. They're starting from a premise that they're talking to people who already hate Donald Trump, who are not going to do any critical thinking, who are not going to go even to the length that I went to take 10 minutes and go look at a transcript, see if there was additional context. Whether or not there is additional context, if someone says something inflammatory, something that seems out of character, seems malicious and cruel and evil, whatever label you want to put on it, go look at the context. Usually, that'll help clarify things. There are not that many monsters out in the world. There are a few, but not that many. most of their audience aren't even going to do the barest scrap of due diligence. They're just going to accept this wholeheartedly. So we have Mika Brzezinski's big sigh, Scarborough talking about how there's so many things wrong about that. How they're going to try and present this. Donald Trump is making a calculated political maneuver that says, I don't care if Americans suffer if it helps me get reelected.
So many things about that are a lie. I mean, first of all, one stat after another shows that what he says, migrant crime worse than all other crimes. One stat after another just says that's not true. Of course, there's individual examples, terrible examples.
So here's an old canard. He's comparing the stats of legal migrants to illegal migrants. Well, here's a funny way of looking at that. If you come into America legally, you are among the most law-abiding citizen demographic profile in America, which is fantastic. Like I said, I love immigrants. They're good people. If you come into the country illegal, here's a stat for you. 100% of them are criminals. They have a 100% crime rate. Every single person who enters this country and stays here illegally is in violation of federal law. I didn't write the law, but it exists. You got to face that. If you don't like that law, change it. Here's a stat. Legal immigration, extremely law-abiding. Illegal immigration, 100% criminals.
Examples like we saw in New York. But overall, if facts matter, if numbers matter, if data matters, what he said there's a lie.
I love it when MSNBC claims to say, oh, facts need to matter. Oh, dear.
Saying that the bill lets in 5,000 migrants a week, that's a lie.
That's true. It's not 5,000 a week. I'm pretty sure it's 5,000 a day. I'd have to go back and read the text. But week or day, that's in the text of the bill. He's calling it a lie. He's not offering a counterpoint.
But Chris Matthews, I just want to zero in because you worked in the House, and it's just extraordinary.
Oh, okay. Chris Matthews has been at MSNBC forever. You can tell he looks like the Crypt Keeper. Okay, let's see what old man Chris Matthews has to say on the topic. Again, the topic is Donald Trump admits he ruined the border deal to hurt Democrats.
That you actually have a president of the United States that talks about migrant crime. So let's just say it's the worst thing in the world. Let's take his lie. And just for argument's sake, say, okay, Donald, we'll accept your lie that migrant crime, you believe migrant crime is the worst crime in the world. So what does Donald Trump do? He admits at the same time he's going to allow, quote, migrant crime, which is the worst crime, as he says, to continue for another year.
This presupposes that the border bill would eliminate the issues of illegal immigrants and the crime that goes with them, which it manifestly would not. So I believe the guy calling Trump a liar is a liar. Shocking.
He's going to allow fentanyl to continue to flood across the border for another year. He's going to allow Americans to die.
How would the bill stop that?
Of fentanyl for another year. He's going to allow, what they say that spies from other countries.
How would the bill you want passed stop the issues you're complaining about? It wouldn't.
Chinese spies from other countries are coming across the southern border. He's going to allow that for another year. And he admits it, that he's going to allow all this to happen because he says, quote, it's good for the other side. So
I don't love Ben Shapiro. Occasionally he makes a good point. One of the points that he makes periodically, this is a good circumstance for it, is when Republicans do something bad, the story is, this is what Republicans did. When Democrats do something bad, the story is, this is the Republicans' response to it. This is the old Republicans pounce. If there's corruption on the Democratic side and Republicans call out that corruption, the story is the Republicans being unreasonable and going too far to call out that corruption. Not about the corruption. Here, he's framing this as though, he said repeatedly, Donald Trump is going to allow X, Y, or Z. Donald Trump is a private citizen. He has no direct influence on the levers of power. The Democrats have an effective majority in the Senate, slim though it may be. Very, very close divided House, so Republicans can't do much there. And the presidency. How is Donald Trump allowing anything? He's not in charge of anything. He's a private citizen.
So he's going to kill the bill because he doesn't want James Langford, a conservative Republican, to work with Democrats on a problem that he says is the worst problem in America. Kind of hard to sort through that, Chris, isn't it?
Well, the thing is that the Republicans and Trump will still benefit from the border issue. If they cut a deal and they really squeeze the Democrats and get them to do something they don't want to do, which is get really tough on the asylum issue and narrow the definition of what it is and really separate the wheat from the chaff and let the right people in and keep the wrong people out.
Bologna.
He still will have the border issue. He's clearly anti-immigrant. And
Bologna. The dude married an immigrant. Unless you're a racist and think that he's really not just that anti-immigrant means anti-brown people. Donald Trump married an immigrant. How can he be anti-immigrant? That's your verbiage. He's anti-immigrant. What he means in their funny little coded world is he's really racist against brown people. He only likes immigrants if they're white and beautiful. That's not what you said.
clearly that's a good issue for him. So even if he cut a deal like this, it doesn't make any sense.
He doesn't have a deal to cut. He's a private citizen. I think Chris Matthews has forgotten that. Former MSNBC host. Okay, he's not there anymore, apparently. He's retired. They pulled him out of retirement to talk about Trump.
Sense. He's got the problem. The American people have the problem. And he still would have won the fight. It's an issue. The border works for the Republicans. It's a fact. Like inflation, it just does.
Why would the border and inflation work for Republicans? Could it be because Democrats do things that cause inflation and weaken the border? I wonder.
People don't like prices, they're going to vote Republican. So I think he really was, I don't understand this, because again, I'm going back to the House Republicans. I know they have a narrow, very narrow advantage there, holding the majority, but there's some good things they could be doing here. They could be doing something about.
I'm going to go ahead and give them the credit. This is actually a point that makes sense. If you don't like the legislation coming from the Senate, submit legislation of your own that shows the kind of policy that you would like to put forth. Put forth a bill that is a good bill and make the Democrats vote against it to put them on the record that they don't want these kind of reforms that you claim to find. This is one of the reasons why I don't like Republicans. They are unwilling to set out a positive strategic objective for America that moves America in the direction that most of their base wants. They sit on their butts. They bat away the worst offenses of the Democrats, and they get rich in the process. I have no patience for that. This is a good criticism. Those in the House should push back against this crazy bill with their own legislation. That's what the House does. It's part of the legislature.
About the border, like the Senate did. They can do this. It's doable, and they don't want to do it. They're afraid of taking him on Putin, and I don't understand what
And now we're to Putin. Somehow. Go Chris Matthews.
Anti-communist party like the Republican Party has always been, why they can't be anti-Putin.
Okay, we're not going down the Putin road today. We're going to stop it right there. The rest of his conversation from my first watch through is him railing about how Putin's a bad guy. I don't think many people disagree with that, but I think we were talking about Donald Trump commenting on the border bill. That's not tied to Putin at all. Joe Biden might think geographically those two are tied together. After all, he recently confused the border between America and Mexico with the border between Israel and Egypt. One of these things is not like the other, but slightly different format today because what we had was a video, but hopefully you enjoyed it. This is Nathan Lindorf with your Reddit Rant for the day. Good luck out there.